People who grew up near the coast are scapegoated more often and the subject of media speculation and scandal. Richard Nixon grew up in Los Angeles, which is a major international city. The thing about New York is that the tides go far inland. They do so in San Francisco as well, but it's not the same as New York, okay? It's a completely different part of the world. And having those tides meaning you're virtually on an island, not on the coast, but on an island, okay? This is what Manhattan is in many senses, including that the Hudson River tides go way up there. So you have, your whole Navy is operating at any time right into the major one world, or Western world rather, activities. But, the distance, it's a hyper combination of things. Chesapeake Bay and Boston, where the rebels came from, okay, where the American Revolution came from. New York, it just didn't, they didn't have that need because they could hop on a boat, the boats would come in and go out as easy as the tide, waiting for the tide, literally, and then the inland communities, there's 3 states in particular, Alabama, Wyoming, Pennsylvania. They all have these very strict cannabis laws. Okay, those, as far as I know, those are the fundamental states. And there are, Pennsylvania's, Philadelphia was said to be a very narrow sidewalk, to say the least. But it's more maybe about Pittsburgh, which is a highly inland empire. Alabama is effectively, it has a coast, but it's not much there. It's a really Bible Belt, okay? And I'll add into that Michigan, even though it's more like Holland in perhaps many ways. It's still well inland. There's I don't know, a lot of barriers to some scapegoat army or speculation. Okay, people doing that in Chicago. It's kind of where everything came together. The Mississippi isn't that far away, and in fact, I understand it flows both ways, right? I'm not sure exactly how that works, but places of conspiracy, for whatever reason it is, Al Capone, but they become excuses rather than sources of imperative intervention, aka George Washington, Ben Franklin. They know who they are, especially from a young age, and nothing is done. It's just this media speculation, conspiracy, etc., of a do-nothing reality of, we're lucky, you're not, your name sounds evil, we're not going to even give you a number, you'll have to make that up yourself. And, that's a, how do you say, scatological cop-out, okay? But the hyper-coastal areas are ripe for conspiracy because there's sailors, to say the least, spies, maybe, indeed, okay, submarines, my God. There, in fact, about 30 years ago, in San Francisco, a ship came from China with 5,000 illegal migrants, and they got stopped in San Francisco, and they went back out into the sea, and maybe they're going to go to Latin America. I don't know, but the plan was that they were going to run aground in my hometown, literally in the Monterey Bay. They were just going to run onto the beach and start running into the fields, basically. Maybe a Steinbeck classic, the grapes of whatever, the sea grapes, I don't know. And I don't even know what happened, but, that's the kind of level of conspiracy, international uncertainties, and, you know, uh, did those people have any safe place in in their part of the world? I don't know. Were they, the kind of people that Ellis Island was built for? I don't know. But plenty about the locals. Someone like George Washington or Kurt Cobain in some maybe depraved coastal area where drugs and maybe logging, mountains, Twilight Saga, vampires, okay, Blue Badge, this is kind of the same thing. The military's Blue Badge, which they say did include Chicago, and I can only imagine Al Capone stimulating that perception or reality, whatever it is. Something about Cleveland, and Chicago both are, meat packing capital centers in America. So, you get enough meat, why not sprinkle with magic pills? And who knows what conspiracies will materialize out of that, okay? And education is historically not it, unless if you're lucky, like Thomas Jefferson. He's got several big sisters. He doesn't have a father figure. He has a single mother, and that's the American dream. That's actually it. Either having an old world connection, so when you go home, you're not actually in America. You're in the old country. You're dealing with your ideally your immigrant father. And maybe your mother learns how to be American because it could be more of a social club. I don't know. But in the science of the imperative intervention, this gets parlayed into some military blunder. Okay, that is positively what George Washington and Ben Franklin are. Not just military, but healthcare. When Ben Franklin is the ideal Doogie Howser, if Ben Franklin, was gay and had a big brother, or was straight and had a big sister, okay, same thing. But that doesn't happen because he doesn't have that lucky reality. He's got the complete paradigm. He's as far as he's Ben Franklin. He's got a little sister, and he's got a big brother who's demanding, and he doesn't have the scholastic intervention to stop the military blunders and the healthcare blunders, because Ben Franklin is 33 years old in 1939 when GPS is initially invented. So the global trade routes can be detected once you have a remotely functioning marine chronometer. And instead, people are just looking about money, and what shows up with money is pandemics, diseases. So Ben Franklin's or George Washington's father dies 2 years later, and indeed the 7 Years' War begins when people start mysteriously dying. Clearly, the indicator of a pandemic, because someone like Ben Franklin, indeed the 10-year-old George Washington, doesn't have an automatic escape from the trauma of not being an only child, of having serious competition in your childhood, or having the little sister, or all of the above. Okay, having the significant American father, an American grandfather, The combination, my gosh, it drives people to drug abuse. And go back to these 3 states. It's actually Nevada, which is kind of, no one really actually lives there. Okay, no one who's going to look out for national security or do anything about it. Actually, waffle that completely. People, victims galore, and crocodile tears. That was it, Wyoming, Alabama, Pennsylvania, all states with a minimal coastal exposure. In fact, Wyoming, none whatsoever. Though there is a deep sea port in Oklahoma City. It's not too far in that flat country out there. And these places with these very strict cannabis laws, at least originally, maybe are a sign of sanity, that they have this minimal access to the world. It's not the accessible frontier. It's highly controlled. And that control is how you stop military blunders, okay? Or, the American Revolution had a lot to do with the migrant crisis. It really did. They were the regulars, the French and the British were losing their top performers, their pride and joy. Mozart. The French Revolution comes along, and all these most trusted people mean nothing because money is flowing, because GPS and modern technology, and it doesn't. It's a godless crisis, actually, that you can put like a light bulb, if you will, or a GPS. You can put God in a bubble in the office with love, and create a philosophical lighthouse to indicate exactly, okay, with whatever antics, whatever politics, whatever greed, whatever flavor of intoxication or blunder, perhaps, or sheer genius. Okay, it's all about the complementary, supplementary balance there. Okay, I'm getting into advanced stuff. I love it, but not doing it by myself, and you cannot do the advanced sequencing unless if you have that office and you have at least some people who are on the same page as you, or just have a ton of books and absolutely no distractions, because that's the problem with these coastal areas, San Francisco, Boston. You don't know who might show up. It might be completely a cliche where Bonnie and Clyde don't even register because that's the norm. But to do the scientific calculations for the imperative interventions, George Washington, Ben Franklin, Bobby Fischer, indeed, the military can have the greatest intelligence to prevent the blunder and the obesity. Okay, look at Bill Clinton, and he's like, that food's all going to me. Okay. Me and my UFO, and we're not going to mention George Washington because he grew up on the accessible frontier and those dangerous domains, whereas the Great South, from the Bible Belt toward the Gadsden Purchase. I think the Gadsden Purchase is sort of like Crimea, okay, except that in one place there's just a bunch of wheat fields, in another place there's just a bunch of cactuses. Okay, they're all super scientists, though. Okay, yes, of course. Pause. Awkward pause. So the military blunder, the medical blunder, it's always basically ignoring the most gifted, most enlightened, most exposed people, and the fear that they may very well have growing up on those historical places. Very complex, but basically, if you have the right people in the right place, I'll sign a lifetime agreement. I don't want to have any secret conspiracy. I despise that. That's like being a pervert. Really the same thing, okay? I'm supposed to be a spy. I might as well be a pervert, okay? Did I just say that? Yes, that's how developed my office work here is out in the middle of the woods, because that's the only place I can escape from random distractions. The phone is going to do that perpetually, and it's horrible. But it is the original sin. The 7 Years' War, which is over in Central Europe, not too far from the Danube River, okay, which turns into the Crimean War and modern politics of international control. It's basically a godless reality that it's perverted, because the military and everyone else, they think George Washington is some sucker, some chump to take advantage of. Make him a tobacco/drug dealer, and everything will be hunky-dory. This is what actually happens. This is actually positively written, that George Washington is floundering. Candy tax, okay, tobacco, whatever dysentery and dental strife that George Washington led the American Revolution from, that division from the old world, that conspiracy, because washing powder, whee, drugs and delusions, and the military saying, oh no, George Washington, as if they're all saying, you don't have a big sister, you're a complete expletive. That's what happens. And therefore, the migrant crisis, the undesirables, take over from the the French ambassador, the whatever high-ranking officials George Washington was floundering with. They all went down, okay, because George Washington didn't have an office. But the love of money, oh my God, and those candy tax, tobacco, jelly beans, whatever prescription cop-out that the military indeed, sprinkles in their delusions, the military blunders, okay, because that intervention, that Fulbright, and there's, this is a rather complex, this is kind of like, what's that fractal equation where they measure the coastline, and you can measure the opposite of the coastline theoretically, okay? And I think that's what a network does, but not making phone calls or, saying, oh, hello, becoming an expletive, but being the pride of intervention, so that you can actually say, oh, Bobby Fischer, he's a really intelligent young kid. We can see that as a teenage boy, okay, and don't take advantage of him. Say, no, this guy, full scholarship, intervention office, and the cultural grace, which someone like that absolutely needed. And the Fisher and the Navigator, and what is it? The Name. I think Bobby Fischer's real last name was Name. It sounded like Name Molier or something, like Name of or something like. I don't know what it was. I don't know how to speak Central European, but Nameberg. Yes, that's it. Yes, because that's what his father was trying to change his name to, something more rational, I guess. And that rationality is only about intervention, okay? Because these individuals have the power to help the whole world, and you especially.